Alright, chat. Today we're going to be watching a song I've been wanting to watch for a while live. You know what I'm saying? By this one creator I very much enjoy. And that creator's name is ScansYT. So we're going to be watching Royal Queen.
I hate school. Just sucks. But the only thing that can make me feel happy again, besides my friends making all them funny jokes, is her. My royal queen.
Yeah!
I know
Sing
that
it.
we're just friends, but I think there can be more to this. The reason that I go through all of this stress is because I always be trying to impress you. You are my royal queen. Hopefully you think I'm your royal king. That's why I did this thing. You are my royal queen. Hopefully you think I'm your royal king. I know that I'm only 14. That's why I did this thing. That's why I decided to sing. My friends keep on laughing at me because I sing about these types of things. When she calls me, my phone goes ring-a-ling, ring-a-ling, ding-a-ling, ring-a-ling, ding-a-ling-a-ling, ding-a-ling, ring-a-ring-a-ling, ding-a-ling, ding-a-ling-a-ling, ring-a-ling, ding-a-ling-a-ling, ring-a-ling. That's why I did this thing, so we could be a thing. 'Cause you are my royal queen. I know I'm only 14. You are my royal queen. I know that I'm only 14. Hopefully you think I'm your royal king. The reason that I did this thing ring-a-ling, ding-a-ling, ring-a-ling, ding-a-ling.
Truly beautiful. Alright. Now let's listen to some actual good shit.
Sell to millions of people online with Shopify's social media and marketplace integrations. You can sell your products directly on Instagram.
More bangers.
Pocket so fat, call me Orbit. Orbit. Gotta wait to make the movies, I be loaded. They would be a few months ago, I make a move on it, nigga, I be loaded. Ain't gotta wait to make the movies, I be loaded. Why you watching drinking 40s, I just told it. Still that same nigga in a foreign, but it's stolen. Ryan sporty, acting sporty, can't control it. I'm doing fraud, got that bag, yeah, I'm transporting. I got that bag on me, nigga, like I'm transporting. He dropped the mixtape, thought I would've reposted. I ain't posting mixtape, cause I don't fuck with shorty. I be booted to the morning, PM to the morning. My little Wally want a bag, you just wanna roll it. Hold up, nigga, don't you owe me? Yeah, you owe me, don't it? Like I'm an island of adventure, how I stay rolling. You tryna diss me? I need you 6 feet. She say she miss me, then she wanna kiss me. Damn, I'm so crispy. Zan got me dizzy. Trust me, I ain't shot. I keep that glitzy. I was spin bent, yeah, Fritz me. What the lick read, baby, come and lick me. V12, I'm riding in a 6-speed. I be ballin' on you niggas out of this league. Ain't gotta wait to make them moves, I be loaded. Why you out here drinking 40s, I just told it. Still that same nigga in a foreign, but it's stolen. Ryan sporty, acting sporty, can't control it. I'm doing fraud, I got that bag, yeah, I'm transporting. I got that bag on me, nigga, like I'm transporting. He dropped the mixtape, thought I would've reposted. I ain't posted mixtape, cause I don't fuck with shorty. Yeah, that Glock got it standing like an outlet. How you out, chip? I ain't catch you out yet. I'm so damn fly, I do not step. Yeah, I pop Molly, and I pop checks. I don't know where I'm going, I'm just floating. My dog got gun license, but he let me hold it. All these niggas phone it, I do not condone it. I be going ham, I do not belong it. It's a cool that moment, yeah. Bought it cause I wanted it. I be on the corner, yeah. Fuck the law enforcement. Project baby got no stroller, but I keep pushing. Shawty love for me to choke her when I'm in that pussy. Ain't gotta wait to make them moves, I be loaded. Why you out here drinking 40s, I just told it. Still that same nigga in a foreign, but it's stolen. Ryan sporty, acting sporty, can't control it. I'm doing fraud, I got that bag, yeah, I'm transporting. I got that bag on me, nigga, like I'm transporting. He dropped the mixtape, thought I would've reposted. I ain't posted mixtape cause I don't fuck with shorty.
Yeah. Alright, now. I remember this shit. 8 years? How long is it?
Yo, man, where's your suit, man? I ain't never seen Russell Simmons in no suit, man.
Look, baby girl, you're so damn fine though. I'm trying to know if I can hit it from behind though. I'm sipping on you like some fine wine though. And when it's over, I press rewind though. Ay, you talking bands, girl, I got it. Benjamin's all in my pocket. I traded in my trues for some robins. You playing Batman, Fetty's gonna rob him. Ay, I got a Glock in my Rari. Ay, 17 shots, no 38. I got a Glock in my Rari. 17 shots, no 38. Yeah, she's fine. Wonder when she'll be mine. She walked past like press rewind to see that ass one more time. And I got this soda. Remy boys, they know us. All fast money, no slow bucks. No one can control us.
Yeah, my city. Tell me what you see. Is it money or it's me?
Man, this song is whack as hell. This is the real version. Yeah, this is
Look, baby girl, you're so damn fine though. I'm trying to know if I can hit it from behind though. I'm sipping on you like some fine wine though. And when it's over, I press rewind though. I eat off the bands, girl, I got it. Benjamin's all in my pocket. I traded in my trues for some robins. Keep playing Batman, Fetty's gonna rob her. I got a Glock in my Rari. 17 shots, no 38.
see? Is it money or it's me? I smoke 20, smell the weed. I got honeys in my V. They like Stewie, can you be my baby daddy? I'm like, yeah. I got robins on my jeans. You see the wings on every pair. All you see is Family Guy. You know my homies everywhere. If somebody got a problem, we can meet up anywhere. Now go say something. Don't you homies play dumb? You know where we come from. You don't want sauce, no A1.
I'm like, yeah, she's fine. Wonder when she'll be mine. She walked past, I press rewind to see that that's one more time. And I got this soda. Family Guy, they know us. All fast money, no slow bucks. No one can control us. Yeah, baby. Sus.
Perfect. Oh. We can watch this chat. Chat.
What about Jim?
Chat.
Jim doesn't need to know.
On December 20th, 1968, 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen and 17-year-old David Faraday were on their first date. Their plan was to stop at a local restaurant before driving out to Lake Herman Road, which was a well-known lover's lane. A few minutes after parking in a graveled area just off the side of Lake Herman Road, a man parked beside the couple's car, rolled down his window, and ordered them to exit their vehicle. When Betty and David refused, the man got out of his car and drew a .22 caliber pistol. Instead of immediately shooting the two teenagers, the man walked behind the couple's car and fired a bullet into their rear left wheel housing. His intention was to scare the couple and force them to herd to the left side of the vehicle. Sure enough, the two scrambled to exit the vehicle using the passenger side door. The killer then ran up to the driver's side window and pressed the gun against David's left ear, shooting him point blank in the skull. By this time, Betty had already exited the vehicle and was running away. The man ran after Betty, gun extended, and shot Betty 5 times in the back. He then returned to his own vehicle and drove off. Shortly after 11 p.m., a woman stumbled upon the bodies of the teenagers and immediately reported them to police, thus sparking the search for the most bizarre and mysterious serial killer of all time.
Wipe out a school bus some morning, shoot out the tires, and then pick off the kiddies as they come bounding out.
The Zodiac Killer is arguably one of the most notorious serial killers of the 20th century. Throughout the late 1960s and 70s, the Zodiac terrorized most of the larger San Francisco area with almost ritualistic murders, punctuating each murder with detailed letters describing exactly how he did it and mocking anyone who would try to catch him. These letters were sent to several newspapers and police departments that were investigating the cases, along with complicated codes and ciphers that are still being decoded to this day.
Homicide that took place out on a county road about sometime after 11 o'clock last night. A double homicide involving...
After his first murder, the Zodiac stayed quiet for about half a year before he struck again, this murder being much more bizarre than the last. On July 4th, 1969, 18-year-old Darlene Ferrin and 16-year-old Michael Mageau were going to get fireworks for the Independence Day celebrations, but as they pulled out of their driveway, they immediately noticed that they were being followed by another car. Panicked, Darlene made a series of twists and turns to try to lose the other vehicle, but eventually ended up pulling into the parking lot of Blue Rock Springs Park, only 4 miles from downtown Vallejo. As the couple parked their car, their pursuer also pulled into the parking lot and parked to the left of Darlene's vehicle, before immediately leaving the parking lot. But the couple was only relieved for a few moments, because around 5 minutes later, the same car pulled back into the parking lot, and this time parked directly behind Darlene's car. A man exited the vehicle with a flashlight. Michael, thinking it was the police, reached into his pocket to grab his identification, and asked Darlene to do the same. But before he could get it out, the man directed the flashlight into the couple's eyes, distracting them for a moment before shooting both Michael and Darlene. More than 7 shots were fired before the man started walking back to his car. The bullets had pierced Darlene's lungs and heart, killing her, but Michael still retained consciousness.
While the man was walking back to his car, Michael let out a painful moan. Hearing this, the man paused, and for a split second, Michael could see the face of his attacker, which he later described to the police in detail. Nevertheless, the man heard that Michael was still alive, and returned to Darlene's car to finish the job. As a last resort, Michael tried jumping into the back seat of the car before the man fired 2 more shots at both of them. At this point, the man had gotten back into his vehicle and drove off. Luckily, 3 teenagers celebrating Independence Day stumbled across the couple and alerted police immediately. Although, the strangest part of this whole ordeal is that after the murder, at 12:40 a.m. on the same day, an anonymous man called the Vallejo Police Department with a payphone.
Vallejo Police Department.
I want to report a double murder.
May I have your
If you
name
go 1
and where
mile
you're calling?
east on Columbus Parkway, public park, you'll find kids in a brown car. They were shot with a 9mm Luger. I also killed those kids last year. Goodbye.
He then abruptly hung up, making this the first time the Zodiac contacted the police. Later, on August 1st, 1969, the Zodiac wrote his first 3 infamous letters to the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner. All 3 letters were nearly identical. In crude handwriting, the letter read, "Dear Editor, this is the murder of the 2 teenagers last Christmas at Lake Herman and the girl on the 4th of July near the golf course in Vallejo. To prove I killed them, I shall state some facts which only I and the police know." He proceeded to state details about the brand of ammo he used, how many shots were fired, and the victim's clothing. He continued with, "Here is a part of a cipher. The other 2 parts of this cipher are being mailed to the editors of Vallejo Times and San Francisco Examiner. I want you to print the cipher by the afternoon of Friday, 1st of August, 1969. I will go on a kill rampage Friday night. I will cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again, until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend." At the end of the letter was an 8-line series of characters, including Greek symbols, Morse code, weather symbols, alphabet letters, and astrological symbols. Complying with the demands of the Zodiac, the Times-Herald and the Chronicle both printed their parts of the cipher in their next editions, while the Examiner waited until Sunday to publish their part because of doubts that the letter was real. The cipher was quickly passed on to Naval Intelligence for deciphering, while the NSA and the CIA also joined the effort. Although, a police chief at Vallejo, Jackie Stilts, wasn't convinced that the letter was real. He publicly requested that the killer send a second letter with more information to prove it was real. Meanwhile, Donald and Betty Hardin, a couple living a few miles south of San Francisco, saw the cipher in their morning paper, and having been avidly interested in puzzles since they were young, Donald and Betty decided to try and see if they could solve it. The couple reasoned that the killer most likely started the cipher with the letter I, or by saying "I like killing." They also used common letter pairings like the double L that appears in the word kill, and with these assumptions, the rest of the message could be decoded. It read, "I like killing because it is so much fun. It is more fun than killing wild game in the forest because man is the most dangerous animal of all to kill." The message goes on to describe the thrill of murder. The letter also says that when he dies, the people who he has killed will become his slaves in paradise. He explains that he won't release his identity because the police will stop his collection of slaves. But towards the end of the cipher, the letters seem to be jumbled up. This led some to believe that this was an anagram. We'll talk more on that later. While the cipher had been solved but not released to the public, the letters didn't stop. And only 3 days after Donald and Betty solved the first cipher, the Zodiac sent a second letter. This time, he was responding to Chief Stilts' request for more information to prove he was the killer. The letter read, "This is the Zodiac speaking. In answer to your request for more details about the good times I had in Vallejo, I shall be very happy in supplying more material. By the way, are the police having a good time with the code? If not, tell them to cheer up. When they do crack it, they will have me." This was followed by more details about how he murdered his victims and other details that had not yet been released to the public, which confirmed that the letters were indeed from the real killer responsible for the murders and not the work of a fraud.
Lost Mississippi Medicaid and need health coverage? At healthcare.gov, 4 out of 5 customers.
At this point, the decoded cipher was published all over the Bay Area, and amateur codebreakers across the country started analyzing the letters thoroughly. They first turned their attention to the jumble of letters at the last line of the cipher. It was unanimously agreed upon that it could be an anagram for the killer's real name. Some suggestions were Emmett O. Wright, Robert Hemphill, Van M. Blackman, I. M. O. Wright, and Kenneth O. Wright. Some dismissed this theory and suggested that the jumble of letters were only there to throw them off. After all, the killer did say, "I will not give you my name." After this first string of letters, it wouldn't take long for the Zodiac to kill again.
But he told me at that time that he had killed a guard getting out of a prison. And so I did take him as a killer. To me, a killer isn't a normal person, so I assumed at the time that something was wrong. But as far as a psychopath or...
On September 27, 1969, college students Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were having a picnic at Lake Berryessa when Cecilia noticed a man walking towards them. Cecilia mentioned it to Brian, but Brian dismissed it as nothing.
And when she says, "I see a man over there," what I'm thinking is, if you look to the left of her, you can see those trees on that hill. That would be another picnic area. So seeing someone on that hill, would be of interest, but not of any great urgency. But seeing someone as close as her would obviously be some cause for concern. And so I'm continuing to talk, and then she says, "He went behind a tree." And so he goes behind the tree where she is, and again, I'm thinking behind those trees over there.
Minutes later, the man was within 20 feet from the couple when he drew a gun. He was wearing a black executioner-type hood with the Zodiac symbol on his chest. As the man pointed the gun, he demanded the couple's money and car keys so he could drive to Mexico. Brian pulled his car keys and only 50 cents out of his pockets and handed them to the cloaked man. Brian later told police that the man pocketed the 50 cents and then tossed the car keys back to the couple, at which point the man put his gun back in the holster on his waist. The man told the couple that he was an escaped convict from Deer Lodge, Montana, and that he had killed a prison guard to escape.
This came out since then, but he told me at that time that he had killed a guard getting out of a prison. And so I did take him as a killer. To me, a killer isn't a normal person, so I assumed at the time that something was wrong. He wanted our money. And I actually laughed at the moment because I told him, I says, "I've only got 75 cents in my pocket." And I says, "You're welcome to have it. But if you need help, I'm sure."
He claimed that he had already stolen a car, but it was, quote, "too hot." After explaining himself, the man pulled out a 3-foot clothesline and instructed Cecilia to tie Brian's hands. After Brian was tied up, the man proceeded to tie up Cecilia's hands. At this point, Brian recalls the man saying, "I'm going to have to stab you people." He proceeded to stab Cecilia 10 times and Brian 6 times. After believing he had finished the job, the man left the scene and hiked 500 yards to the couple's car, and with a black felt-tip pen, he wrote on the car door, "Vallejo, 12/20/68, September 27th, 69, 6:30, by knife." The couple, who were both still conscious, were found by a fisherman and his son and were taken to the hospital, and at 7:40 p.m. on the same day, much like the last murder, the Zodiac called in to the Napa County Sheriff's Office to report his crime.
Napa Police Department. I want to report a murder. No. A double murder. They are 2 miles north of parking headquarters. They were in a white Volkswagen Carmen Ghia. I'm the one that did it.
Cecilia later died from her wounds, but Brian survived to explain the ordeal to the police and press. By now, the police were starting to see similarities in the Zodiac's murders. 1. The Zodiac targeted young students, mostly couples. 2. The attacks all occurred on weekends, 2 near holidays. 3. The murders would usually take place at either dusk or night. 4. The killer would often brag about his murders in letters or calls. 5. Most of the murders took place in well-known lovers' lanes. 6. The murders all took place in or around cars. And finally, 7. The murders all took place near a body of water. These patterns picked up by police suggested a number of reasons for his strange killings. Because most of the victims were couples, the Zodiac was maybe frustrated with couples or love, and potentially could hold a specific hate for women, because in the last 2 murders, the focus for most of the damage was on the woman, causing them to die in both cases, but leaving the men to survive. But with his next and final confirmed murder, the Zodiac would break his pattern.
Guns take the threat seriously. The psychotic killer has already murdered 5. 1 at a lover's lane near a lake just north of San Francisco. 3 others in nearby Vallejo. The latest, a taxi driver in San Francisco. The Zodiac killer seems to crave publicity. He sent letters.
On October 11th, 1969, only 2 weeks after his last murder, the Zodiac entered a cab driven by Paul Stine at around 9:30 p.m. He requested to be taken to Washington and Maple Streets in Presidio Heights, but for some reason, the cab driver drove 1 block past their destination, maybe at the instruction of the passenger. The Zodiac waited for the car to come to a full stop on the side of the road before grabbing Paul Stine's collar and shooting him point blank in the right side of the skull. At this point, the Zodiac exited the vehicle from their rear doors and re-entered the vehicle through the passenger side door. While sitting in the front seat, the Zodiac grabbed the cab driver's wallet and tore off a piece of his shirt before exiting the vehicle once again. While all this was taking place, 2 teenagers who lived across the street saw the cab from their second-floor window and called the police. But while the kids were giving the police a description of the man they saw, the Zodiac was mistakenly described as a black male. This one mistake proved to be massively detrimental, as it allowed the Zodiac to evade capture once again. This was because in the dead of night, a police patrol unit reached the scene and saw a man, quote, lumbering along in the fog. This was later determined to most likely have been the Zodiac. But since this man was white, the police didn't stop him and only asked him if he had seen anything unusual in the area, to which the man responded that he had seen someone waving a gun around a couple blocks to the east, at which point the patrol unit sped off in that direction. If the police had stopped the man or come any closer, they would have seen that the man's jacket was drenched in Paul Stine's blood. But police did find evidence in the cab driver's vehicle. A partial print was found in blood that was later confirmed to be that of the Zodiac's. Also, the kids who had seen the Zodiac quickly collaborated with a police sketch artist to try and come up with a preliminary sketch of the Zodiac. By now, the kids' mistake had already been corrected, and so the first sketch of the Zodiac was drawn and circulated to every cab company in the area. After another failed attempt at catching the killer, the Zodiac saw this as a perfect opportunity to taunt the police department once more. On October 14th, only 3 days after the murder, the Chronicle received another letter from the Zodiac. But this one was different from his previous letters, in that the Zodiac had included a piece of Paul Stine's blood-soaked shirt in the letter. It read, "This is the Zodiac speaking. I am the murderer of the taxi driver over by Washington Street and Maple Street last night. To prove this, here is a blood-stained piece of his shirt. I am the same man who did in the people in the North Bay area. The SF police could have caught me last night if they had searched the park properly instead of holding road races with their motorcycles, seeing who can make the most noise." The letter continues, ridiculing the SFPD before ending with a chilling threat. It reads, "School children make nice targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out." The Chronicle published the letter in their next edition, but excluded the school bus threat at the request of authorities. Despite the advice, the threat was released a mere 2 days later.
"School children make fine targets. I think I shall wipe out a school bus some morning. Just shoot out the front tire and then pick off the kiddies as they come bouncing out."
Now, what are you doing to protect the school buses, particularly in San Francisco, from that?
In San Francisco, we have been, since the first day, since the reception of this note, and up to now and continuing, we have a number of plainclothes officers following buses in the morning and in the evening.
"I shall wipe out a school bus some morning, shoot out the tires, and then pick off the kiddies as they come bounding out." That was the threat of the Zodiac killer. Now, every day, police cars follow the buses which would be likely targets. Officers armed with shotguns take the threat seriously.
While the world was informed of the school bus threat, panic swept over the Napa Valley Unified School District, who were in charge of the school buses. School bus drivers across the district were given a set of instructions on how to handle an attack from the Zodiac. 1. Continue driving with a flat tire. Do not stop. 2. Tell the children to get below the windows and lie on the floor. 3. The driver will continue driving and turn on all lights while sounding his horn. 4. The bus driver should not stop until he has arrived in a well-populated area. 5. Upon arrival at this location, a local law enforcement agency should be notified immediately. Despite the claim from the Zodiac, no such attack ever occurred. Later, after working with the police officers that mistakenly allowed the Zodiac to walk free, a second sketch of the man was made, making him older and his jaw thicker. This sketch was then circulated to the public, replacing the original. With his letters in full swing and the San Francisco area in the palm of his hand, the Zodiac did something that shocked everyone throughout the country.
There ain't nothing left for me here. It's safe to say my time has come.
At the end of the month, on October 22nd, the Zodiac called the Oakland PD and asked to speak to Melvin Belli, a prominent lawyer at the time. He said he wanted the lawyer to appear on a TV talk show so that the Zodiac could call in and talk to him on the air. The talk show the Zodiac was referring to was the Channel 7 talk show, which usually started at 7 a.m. but began half an hour early that day. After waiting for 40 minutes on the air for the Zodiac to call in, the telephone finally rang, but hung up almost immediately. The next call came in at 7:20. This time, he stayed on the call for longer, and after being asked if he had any other name other than Zodiac, the man said Sam.
Talk to us. Just tell us what's going on inside you right now, Sam, please.
I have headaches.
Right. How long have you had those headaches, Sam? I mean, a long time?
Since I killed a kid.
Well, was it before December that you had the headaches?
Yes.
Were you in service that you might have had an injury in service? Or did you ever fall out of a tree or downstairs? Were you ever unconscious?
I don't know.
You don't remember. Does aspirin do you any good?
No.
Doesn't do any good. Sam, that stuff never did me any good either when I had it. Sam, let me ask you this. There's some reason why you go to a particular doctor or a particular priest, and some reason why apparently you wanted to talk to me or Lee. Is it that you feel that we have compassion for people who get in trouble? Or is it you feel that we can do something for you? Or is it you feel that we have enough integrity that if we promise you something, that we're going to stick to it? Well, let's find out why he wanted to talk to you. Why did you want to talk to Mr. Belli, Sam?
I don't want to be hurt.
If it all boils down to the question of you're giving yourself up, if you could be assured that you wouldn't get capital punishment for myself.
I don't want to give myself up.
Huh?
I want to kill those kids.
The Zodiac called the show a total of 35 times, but only 12 of them were heard on air. But people were still hesitant on whether this caller was really the Zodiac. To confirm, the only 3 people who had ever heard the Zodiac's real voice, Nancy Slover, who was the telephone operator on duty when the Zodiac claimed responsibility for the murders, David Slate, who was the police officer who had seen the Zodiac the night of the cab driver murder, and Brian Hartnell, the survivor of the Lake Berryessa stabbing, were all brought in to verify the voice in the calls. All of them agreed that the voice they had heard was much deeper and older than the one in the calls.
We tried to give it to him.
You both sound convinced that this is the man, but this is not.
No, we're not convinced, really. I'm not convinced.
I'm convinced that this is a kook.
Well,
I mean a sick man.
Yeah.
Not a kook in the sense that he's perpetrating a hoax.
Not necessarily. I listen to the program. My opinion, for what it's worth, my opinion is that this is no hoaxer, no prankster. The man on that show, I sincerely believe, has a problem, has a mental problem, but he may or may not have been the so-called Zodiac person.
Further investigation discovered that the calls were actually made from the Napa State Hospital by a mental patient, effectively proving that the Zodiac was not the one making the calls. In the following weeks, the Zodiac would send 2 more letters boasting about 2 more murders. In the first letter, there's a card that reads, "Sorry I haven't written, but I just washed my pen." On the inside it reads, "This is the Zodiac speaking. I thought you would need a good laugh before you hear the bad news. You won't get the news for a while yet. P.S. Could you print this new cipher in your front page? I get awfully lonely when I'm ignored. So lonely I could do my thing. This letter also contained another cipher, and since his last one had been cracked in a day, the Zodiac decided to make this one considerably more challenging, now known as the Z340 cipher. This cipher remained unsolved for over 50 years until a few weeks ago, an international group of 3 amateur codebreakers used computer software to finally crack the Z340 cipher. This cipher requires the letters to be substituted, read diagonally, rearranged, and flipped while also skipping certain words. It was due to the complex nature of this cipher that it remained unsolved for so long, but once it is finally decoded, it reads, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a good point about me. I am not afraid of the gas chamber." The letter continues and says that he will have his slaves work for him in the afterlife, a belief that he expressed in his first letter back in 1969. Although the letter doesn't give us any clues as to who the Zodiac was, it does confirm that it was not the Zodiac who called into Melvin's show. Not only that, but it also confirms that the Zodiac keeps up with his own publicity and was in fact watching the show. The second letter the Zodiac sent in 1969 read, "This is the Zodiac speaking. Up until the end of October, I have killed 7 people. I have grown rather angry with the police for their telling lies about me, so I shall change the way of collecting my slaves. I shall no longer announce to anyone when I commit my murders. They shall look like routine robberies, killings of anger, a few fake accidents, etc. The police shall never catch me because I have been too clever for them." The letter goes on to list some facts that the police departments got right and wrong. In a 7-page rant, the Zodiac states that the police sketch that was circulated is correct, but quote, "The rest of the time, I look entirely different." He also states that contrary to what the police say, he never left fingerprints at his murders. He says that he'd been leaving fake clues at his murders to, quote, "keep the cops happy." He then goes on to describe the moment where he got stopped by police after the cab murder. P.S. 2 cops pulled a goof about 3 minutes after I left the cab. I was walking down the hill to the park when this cop car pulled up and one of them called me over and asked me if I saw anyone acting suspicious or strange in the last 5 to 10 minutes. And I said yes, there was a man waving a gun and the cops peeled rubber and went around the corner. After he recapped his encounter with the police, the Zodiac wrote step-by-step instructions on how to create a bomb with household items. But the following sentence caught investigators' attention. The Zodiac writes, "What you do not know is whether the death machine is at the site or whether it is being stored in my basement for future use." If the Zodiac was telling the truth that he had a basement, it would drastically reduce the list of possible locations where the Zodiac lived. First, the Zodiac having a basement means that he lives in a house and not an apartment building. And second, basements aren't that common in the Bay Area, so either the Zodiac didn't live in the Bay Area, or in revealing that he had a basement, he had made a possibly fatal mistake.
I believed him when he said I was going to die, he was going to kill me. Don't panic, don't scream, don't yell. Just wait and see what happens. You know, he could have stopped at any time and physically been stronger than I was. I was like 7 months pregnant. I had a little kid on my lap.
On March 22nd, 1970, Kathleen Johns was on her way to visit her sick mother in Petaluma with her 10-month-old baby. She was driving on Highway 132, a rarely used road, when a car seemed to be following her. In the near midnight darkness, Kathleen decided to slow down and let the car pass her, but before she could do so, the car started honking its horn and blinking its lights at her. Knowing how dangerous it was to pull her car over with a stranger behind her on such a deserted road, she kept driving. The car behind her noticed this and accelerated into the lane right beside Kathleen. From his passenger side window, a man shouted that Kathleen's rear tire was wobbling. Still skeptical of the man, Kathleen waited until she had made it to the freeway to pull over. The man pulled over behind her and told her again that her rear tire was wobbling. He then offered to fix it, explaining that he had the appropriate tools in his car. Kathleen agreed, and so the man retrieved his tools and tightened the lugs on the woman's vehicle. Once the man finished fixing her tire, he notified Kathleen and returned to his car. After merging back onto the freeway and driving for a few seconds, Kathleen's whole rear tire spun off. She attempted to pull over once again when the same man came back. Seeing her tire completely detached, the man offered to take her to the nearest gas station. Eventually, Kathleen agreed. They started driving down the freeway, but to Kathleen's surprise, He completely passed the gas station before passing a number of exits as well. At this point, Kathleen knew something was wrong but didn't say anything. The man took her to various rocky, deserted roads before breaking the silence and saying,
"I'm going to throw your baby out the window."
Terrified, Kathleen began frantically thinking of ways to escape. In the panic and chaos, her best and only option was jumping out of the passenger side door. The next time the man pulled up to a stop sign, she executed her plan, finally escaping the car and rolling into a ditch. After the Zodiac had tried and failed to find her in the ditch, Kathleen waited on the side of the road until a female driver saw her and offered to take her to a police station. When she arrived at the station, she talked to a police officer about her situation, and after being shown a police sketch of the Zodiac, Kathleen strongly believed that he was the one who had abducted her.
I looked up on the wall and there was one of those composite drawings of the person I just spent this time with. Turns out it was the Zodiac, and I didn't know who that was at the time. It meant nothing to me.
After police units went back to retrieve Kathleen's car, they discovered that it had been set on fire, most likely by the Zodiac to destroy any incriminating evidence. Around a month later, on April 19, 1970, the Zodiac sent another letter in cipher. The letter read, "This is the Zodiac speaking. By the way, have you cracked the last cipher I sent you? My name is," followed by a 13-character cipher which, when decoded, is supposed to contain the Zodiac's name. But because the cipher is only 13 characters long, it is nearly unsolvable. There have been thousands of possible solutions to the cipher, but no way of knowing whether any of them are correct. The letter continues with the Zodiac claiming he's killed 10 people to date, and that he would have killed more, except the bomb he was going to use was a dud. The second page of the letter shows a diagram of his new and improved bomb and how it works. Of course, the newspaper and the authorities kept any mention of a bomb threat hidden from public knowledge in order to prevent panic. For the next 4 years, around 8 Zodiac letters were sent to the Chronicle, containing much of the same information and pleas for attention as his previous letters. One more cipher was sent, and when deciphered, it apparently contained the location of a bomb that would go off in the fall of 1970. No bomb was ever found or detonated. In one of these letters, the Zodiac claimed responsibility for Kathleen John's abduction, confessing that he lit Kathleen's car on fire after failing to kill her. His final letter was sent on January 30th, 1974, and seemed to review the movie The Exorcist, before once again demanding publicity. At the end of the letter, the Zodiac's final score was written: Me 37, SFPD 0. Police had only confirmed 5 murders and 2 attempted murders from the Zodiac, so his claim of 37 murders could very well just be an exaggeration. The Zodiac did previously say in a letter, though, that he would not continue announcing his murders, and he would make them look like accidents, meaning the final murder count could technically range anywhere from 5 to 37. Because of the magnitude and popularity of this case, many people have claimed to be the Zodiac for attention, or given false tips to police, making it very hard to identify who's telling the truth and who's not. That being said, one of the most likely suspects in the case, and one that the police identified very early on, was Arthur Lee Allen.
I'm not the Zodiac killer. I know that. I know that deep in my soul.
Suspicion first arose about Allen when a friend of his, Donald Cheney, voiced concerns he had that Allen was connected to the Zodiac killings. Donald Cheney explained that Allen and him used to go hunting together, and at one point, Allen had asked him, "Have you ever thought about hunting people?"
He said he would give himself an identity and write letters to the editors, and he'd have a name, and it would be Zodiac.
Allegedly, Allen had started explaining how he would murder people and how it would be impossible to track him down because he had no motive. Donald Cheney also claimed that Allen had said he would sign letters to the police as the Zodiac killer. Allen later denied any recollection of this conversation. After this tip, police went to question Allen. In the interview, Allen had said he had an interest in guns, but only owned .22 calibers. A witness would later state otherwise. Allen was also dishonorably discharged from the Navy, which was a critical clue because the character profile of the Zodiac indicated that he most likely had military experience. The terminology used in the Zodiac letters indicate military, specifically Air Force language, in terms like unflappable, which is an adjective that means calm and clear thinking. There were also footprints that were found at a few crime scenes that indicated that the Zodiac most likely wore wing walkers, a brand of boot that is only sold at military outlets. His knowledge of guns and cryptology is also likely learned in the Navy. When asked where he was during the Lake Berryessa stabbing, Allen had said he spent most of his day at his house, but he had no witness to support his alibi. Allen also owned a watch from the company named Zodiac, whose brand logo was the infamous Zodiac signature. Because this was the only time that the signature and the name Zodiac ever appeared together before the letters, it is assumed that the Zodiac took his name and sign from the watch brand, which Arthur Lee Allen owned. In 1991, Michael Mageau, the man who survived one of the Zodiac's shootings, had later identified Arthur Lee Allen as the person who appeared most similar to the man who shot him, therefore making him the most likely Zodiac suspect at the time. But despite the circumstantial evidence, fingerprint and handwriting analyses did not match between the Zodiac and Allen, and the police sketch of the Zodiac didn't resemble Allen at all. Although, police kept him as a person of interest because they had speculated that the fingerprint found in Paul Stine's cab wasn't from the Zodiac. But before any concrete incriminating evidence surfaced, Allen died of a heart attack on August 26, 1992. He remains the sole and top suspect. Another possible suspect is Richard Gaikowski. Gaikowski was the editor of a counterculture newspaper based in San Francisco, where most of the Zodiac's killings took place. There are a number of clues that connect him to the Zodiac, such as his army service as a medic in the 1950s, meaning he fit the military assumption for the Zodiac. But unfortunately, 80% of Richard's army records were destroyed in a fire, so not much more is known about his time in the army. Although, the main reason Gaikowski became a prominent suspect was the long and frequent letters the police would receive from a coworker of his who nicknamed himself Goldcatcher. In these letters, Goldcatcher claimed that Gaikowski had frequently talked about committing violent acts similar to that of the Zodiac. In 2009, Goldcatcher provided voice recordings of Gaikowski's voice, and Nancy Slover, the police dispatcher who took the Zodiac's 911 calls when he reported the murders, and one of the only 4 people who have ever heard the Zodiac's real voice, confirmed that the voice recordings of Richard Gaikowski matched the voice she heard on the phone that night.
What's the code? Until a code is broken, you never any way of knowing whether it's a real code or whether it's just a fake code. Don't worry.
The last part of that was even more like what I heard in the first part.
Lastly, in the cipher that supposedly contained the Zodiac's identity, the word Geik appears, and some speculate this might be a nickname for Gaikowski. Unfortunately, most of the evidence against this suspect are claims made by the anonymous Goldcatcher, who has very little credibility, so none of these claims can be considered conclusive.
The mystery has never been solved, and now one man claims to have indisputable evidence. He knows who the killer is. Gary Stewart, author of a new memoir, The Most Dangerous Animal of All, says the serial killer is his father, Earl Van Best, Jr.
The final and one of the most popular suspects in the Zodiac case is Earl Van Best, Jr. The basis for suspecting Van Best comes from the book The Most Dangerous Animal of All, authored by Gary Stewart, who claims that his biological father, Earl Van Best Jr., was the Zodiac killer. When this book was published, it became very popular among the general public. The author claims that his father lived in California at the time of the killings and was very interested in ciphers and codes. He also matched the composite sketch of the Zodiac and had many strange friends, including a Satanist and a Manson family member. Some of the more concrete evidence was the fact that a handwriting expert found that the handwriting on Best's marriage certificate matched the handwriting in the Zodiac's letters, making this one of the few times an expert certified a match to the Zodiac's handwriting. Unfortunately, critics quickly dismissed the suspect because there was not enough evidence against him. The facial match to the composite sketch was a very loose one, and it was also later determined that the handwriting on Best's marriage certificate actually belonged to the minister who officiated the marriage and not to Best himself, therefore effectively ruling out Best as a suspect. Throughout the late 1960s and 70s, the fear of the Zodiac Killer gripped the San Francisco area and sent the whole nation into a frenzy. Although, even decades after the last letter, there are still many aspects of this case that remain unsolved. Not only is the identity of the Zodiac Killer unclear, but the number of victims could range from 5 to nearly 50, and the translations to his cryptic ciphers are still being decoded 50 years later. Despite all of the publicity that this case received, the identity of the Zodiac Killer remains one of the most popular unsolved mysteries in true crime history.